Welcome back to the Red Pill Cartel. I have a very awesome guest today. Recording artist, synthwave artist, Grammy winning artist, musician, Megan McDuffie. How are you?
Hey, I am well. I wish I could say I was a Grammy-winning artist, but I am not yet.
I thought you were in the past, were you not?
No, I've won some awards, but no Grammys as of today.
I could have sworn it said that way back when I was reading about you in the past.
Wishful thinking.
Okay, well, my bad.
All
You do
good.
have you do have some awards though, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
different.
okay. Cool. So let me ask you, where did it all start for you with music? Like, how early of an age?
There was not really a defining age or moment. It was just always kind of there. Um,
Right. Did you have any musicians in your family?
no, not really. My grandfather liked to sing, but it was never something that anyone actually gave him credit for. He would just like sing around the house. But yeah, no real musicians in my family that I know of. Um, but yeah, just from day one, ever since I could talk and walk and, smash keys, that's what I was doing.
Yeah. Was the piano or synth like the first thing you went to, or?
Both piano and voice were pretty much at the same time. So like I started private piano lessons when I was 8. Um, and then I was doing vocal performances even before that, before I had any actual training, doing talent shows for my school and stuff. But then, yeah, I joined choir not too long after that. So it's been my
Right on,
whole
right
life.
on. Yeah, yeah. And there's a lot of people that, they love music, but sometimes they don't really get a chance to, well, they get a chance to like, play around and stuff and practice at home, but they don't get a chance to really pursue a career in it. And where did that start for you?
So I always knew I wanted to do music professionally. Once I was in high school and mature enough to actually think about that, I knew that's what I wanted to do, but it wasn't until I took a film music course once I got into college that I really was like, oh, this is it. Okay, I understand now. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So from there, yeah, I kind of did like the film scoring focus and orchestration. But then that sort of pivoted a little bit to video games later on. But yeah, I'd say in
Is
college is kind of when the light bulb went off, like, oh, this is how I'm going to channel it. Because before then, I was like, well, I sing and I play piano, so I guess I'll start out as a vocal major. So that's
right
kind of
on.
where it changed a little bit.
Cool. So the way I discovered you was through River City Girls, because way back in when I was a kid, I was a huge fan and still am of River City Ransom.
Hmm.
And when I started playing River City Girls, I was like, holy shit, the music in this game is fucking awesome.
Oh,
And
thank
then I
you.
had to like search who did it, and I found you. And then I was like, I like 3 or 4, wow, it's like 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
2019 that game came out, and yeah, so I sent you a message. I'm like, fantastic job with the music. And the cool thing about it is that you paid homage to the original tracks in River City Ransom, and that was like, oh my God, this is so amazing.
Well, thanks. I super appreciate it.
You're welcome. Was gaming a passion for you as well? Is that why you pivoted toward gaming, video game soundtracks, or?
Yeah, kind of. I was sort of a late bloomer as far as gaming goes. I didn't have a console until my dad brought one home. I think I was 12, 12 or 13 around there. So it wasn't like super young introduction to
Mhm.
that. But yeah, as soon as he brought home a 64, I was absolutely, completely floored. Um, but yeah, it was interesting. Like I was super focused on film in college. But then after college, when I was like getting, trying to get work and trying to line up gigs for myself, there, I just wasn't finding enough. And I was like, well, maybe I should try games as well because I had loved games as well as film soundtracks. So I kind of just decided, like, well, film's not working out quite the way I had hoped yet. Let me pivot to games, see what's there for me. And that just sort of took off. And the more energy I put into it, the more it worked.
Sure, sure. And do you see a future for you shifting towards film? Is that like your passion to like move towards, or are you just like kind of comfortable in your zone right now?
I will do any project if it's cool. Like
Oh, okay.
if a director came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to score my film. Here's what it's about." And, we got along and the project looked interesting. Of course, I would jump on a film. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could definitely see you doing something, futuristic or cyberpunk because that's pretty much what your music, your style tends to be in. How did that kind of mold the way that you shaped your direction and how you were going? Like, are you like a fan of like sci-fi and stuff like that? And like, is that why it's kind of embedded in your conscience when you write?
It's so funny that that sort of became one of the main styles that people associate with me because,
Right.
like I said, I'm classically trained, I'm jazz trained. I was focusing on film scoring, which is like, orchestral, so I can write for symphony. And it's just super funny that the cyberpunk thing sort of came about. I guess I would have to, let's see, how did that come
You
about? It's
you even have
probably,
another account
yeah,
where you do
I do. I
another
do.
side project that you do, and it's cyberpunk related.
Right. Right. This is true. But yeah, I think yes, have always been a fan of sci-fi and fantasy, absolutely, horror as well. Um, and I think it kind of just came about because I grew up with 80s and 90s movies. A lot of them were sci-fi and fantasy.
The
And then
best.
I know, we could go on about movies, but uh kind of in like the 2011, 2012 time period when I was working for iTunes, I was getting kind of a lot of newer music coming my way. And that's really when I started noticing that people were creating synthwave. And at the time, it
Hmm.
wasn't really called synthwave yet. It hadn't developed into this like pretty substantial cultural thing. Uh,
Right. And
artists,
not to mention the subgenres of synthwave, like
oh,
dark
for sure.
synthwave and all that shit. I love it. Like when I play that stuff at work, people are so into it.
Yeah.
They're like, what kind of music is this?" And they don't even know. I'm like, dude,
Right.
it's pretty much just called synthwave. And
Yeah.
you got all these bands like, I could go on and on and on, but yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, I think once I figured out that people were creating music that sort of brought me back to the 80s and 90s and my childhood and just sort of conjured that vibe for me, I was like, I should get in with some of these other artists that are producing this style because I really enjoy listening to it. It reminds me of the movies I used to watch. It reminds me of like the old Euro dance tracks that I used to listen to. Uh,
yeah, it's definitely got a very nostalgic feel for
yes,
sure. But at the
absolutely.
same time, timeless. And, like there's some bands out there like Daft Punk or, uh, Perturbator or Carpenter Brute, all kind of encompass like this ball of nostalgia that it is still original at the same time. It's still original stuff, and but it just transports you back, and it makes you feel like, man, I wish we were still living in the '80s. I do. I love the '80s. I was born in '79. Grew
Yeah,
up through the '80s, early
yeah,
'90s. Still have very fond memories of it, and it's just
for sure.
that's why I love listening to that kind of stuff, and that's why your music connected with me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of my fans are around our same age because I think it is
Yeah,
that huge nostalgia hit. Even if
for
it's,
sure.
even if I'm doing more like 90s trip hop or grunge stuff, it's still nostalgic. But yeah, I think people just kind of associated me with a cyberpunk vibe because a lot of people found me through all of those synthwave collaborations that I started doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the gaming too. Like a lot of people must message you like I did, you
right.
know?
Yeah, River
Yeah.
City was definitely a huge one. That to
Yeah.
this day is the project that really got the most eyes and ears on my stuff. Even still, people are discovering it. Like, oh shit, this is awesome.
Yeah. No, it's
That's
great.
pretty
And
cool.
that's the beauty of art too. Like once you put your stuff out there into the egregore, it's eternal, you know, and you never know like 30 years down the road, somebody's gonna River City Girls is gonna be retro at that point. They're gonna play River City Girls and be like, who's this? Where's this lovely music coming from, you know? It's
That would
just
be great.
amazing. Yeah.
I had a wacky moment kind of like that yesterday where I tagged a YouTuber that I really love to watch in one of my Instagram stories. And he's like, "Oh shit, you watch my channel? I've been listening to your music for years." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So like
That's
one of my
amazing.
favorite YouTubers had heard of me already. So it's just the wackiest feeling.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, like, you know, take for example a band like, Kiss, for example. They're one of my favorite rock bands of all time. But like as big as they were, when they first started, they got so huge, like one of the biggest bands in the world. And then Gene would meet like Paul McCartney or John Lennon or something, and he'd be like, he gets like like verklempt,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
he wanted to be like the Beatles, right? So when they came along and like complimented them, it's like, holy shit, okay, I think my life is kind of complete now.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's the coolest feeling when that happens.
for sure. Yeah, I love stories like that too. Just watching people like live out their passion and their dreams, and then have other people that influence them come by and tell them, I love your music. I'm like, what? You love
Yeah,
my music?
yeah. Totally.
Do you play live at all?
I haven't. The only shows that I've played were with my pal Moonrunner 83. He invited me to kind of jump in a few times, which was great. I could just be the guest and show up and sing. I didn't have to have all the logistics of like
Right, right.
booking my own shows, practicing a set, getting the right gear, schlepping that gear. You know what I mean? So that's primarily why I don't play live, is just because the effort versus return on investment, it's just not worth it at this point.
Right, right. Yeah. Maybe in the future, perhaps, if
Potentially.
if the demand is there.
Right. Yeah, that's the other
But
part.
for now, you're just strictly recording artist.
Yes.
You know what? Like that's kind of cool because I always thought of myself as like a little bit of a musician myself, right? But I always kind of got that, like that. I don't want to get up in front of on a stage. You know what I mean? So I think it kind of gives hope for people by you saying that you could be a successful recording artist. You don't have to get up on the stage and be like rock god or princess or something.
Yeah. You don't have to. It does take a different skill set to have the continuous output and marketing, I guess. But it's, any independent artist will wear all of the hats.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What's your most successful recording that you've done in terms of like a game or your own music that's not in a soundtrack?
Hmm.
Are you?
Successful.
Oh, sorry. I'll ask you after this question.
Okay.
Sometimes I
Okay.
get ahead of myself.
Successful is sort of subjective, like
Well, we could say revenue based.
revenue based. Ooh, okay. Hmm. Well, it's hard to sort of narrow down into a singular track because most of my work, as you know, is video game soundtracks. So I get kind of a project fee for the entire 9-month
Okay.
project or something like that.
Okay.
Um, to date, my biggest project would probably be Streets of Rogue 2, which I am currently still working on.
Oh, I can't wait for that game.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been really
The
fun.
first one is hilariously fun.
Mhm. Yeah,
Have you do you play these games at all?
sometimes I will
Yeah.
at least check them out.
Yeah, yeah. Streets of Rogue 1, I played a little bit of it like when it first came out and I put it on the back burner and then I played it again recently and I put in like 30 hours. So
Yeah,
much fun.
it looks really fun. I have not played it yet, but I've watched a lot of people playing it and I've, talked to the developer at length and seen artwork and all that stuff. So I feel kind of like I've played it even though I haven't personally.
Yeah, this one's supposed to be more open world, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the first one was just like you have a bit of a city and you go through it, and then you go to the next one, and then you go to the next one.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Shit, I lost the other question I was going to ask you
That's
before.
okay because I did want to mention that um, the other track of mine that felt like a huge success was recently I covered Placebo, Every You, Every Me.
Ah, yes,
And that went viral on Instagram. And then when I released the full song, I could not believe how many streams it got in a short
that's great.
amount of time. So, like in the first month or something, I think it's almost at like 60 or 70,000 plays since last month. And it
Wow,
kind of blew me away that that one took off so quickly. So yeah, that's
that is
that
amazing,
one.
especially for it being like an older song too, you know?
Right, right. I had
And
completely forgotten that it was in Cruel Intentions. Like I totally
oh,
forgot
that's right.
about
Yeah,
that. And so a lot of people that came through were like, "Oh, Cruel Intentions," and I'm like, "Wait, oh yeah, it wasn't. That wasn't it."
Placebo's still going, I believe.
I think so.
I don't know like what their popularity level is these days, but it's hard to gauge now because like music isn't what it used to be, you know? Like people don't like really go out and buy albums anymore, which I find very unfortunate because
Same.
I used to be a huge collector of CDs and all that
Hmm.
stuff. Like I grew up around 8 tracks, cassette tapes, vinyl, all that stuff. So I always love to have the physical copies
Yep.
and the lyric sheets
Same.
and all that stuff.
For
And
sure.
then people would make fun of me for listening to metal. Can't understand what to say. I'm like, that's what the lyric sheet's for, buddy. You know,
Got it right here.
like I just loved artwork and like opening them up and getting the fresh smell of the
Hmm.
plastic and amazing.
For
This
sure.
was the question I was going to ask you. Are you going to put together an album of cover songs in synthwave? Because that's what you seem to be working on lately, correct? Like your
Yes.
latest single is Rhiannon by Fleetwood Mac, and it is so good. I played it for my dad today. He's like, wow.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Love that. Yes. I wasn't originally planning on doing a cover album when I started doing these covers. Just back in, let's see, November was the first one ish. Um, but now, because people have been asking for it, I am planning on doing that. So I'll probably release the majority of the tracks as singles first, um, so that I have like a nice cadence to keep momentum on it. And
right.
then
And
I
then
will
compile
then compile at the end with like one to
extra tracks that
three,
were not singles.
yeah, one to
Yeah.
three-ish that are surprises. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. And it's so cool to hear these covers in synthwave. There's another guy that I really like. Is I think his name is it's something Kid.
Dream Kid?
Yes, yes. And his stuff is so much fun to like. His TikTok reels are so much fun, and he's such a cool guy too. Like when I reach out to him, he's like, "Oh yeah, thanks so much." I love that about certain artists that they're able to communicate with their fans What do you think about people that don't? Do you think they're just too big or they have like a PR system that they have to go through? Like, what is with that? Because that was one of the things I loved about you is like, oh, she fucking texted me back. Sweet. You know?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Usually, I think it's just that they aren't taking the time to do that because it's a lot, right?
And
Like I
once
said
once you
before,
once you
yeah,
kind of expose yourself to somebody, they'll probably get obsessive, that kind of thing. That's
you
another
know,
possibility too, right?
it's definitely possible. I haven't luckily run into anything
That's good.
quite so sinister. But yeah, I mean, it's just now getting to the point where I can't quite get back to everybody in a timely fashion. Uh,
Sure.
I don't even see all the comments on the posts nowadays because Instagram will like drip feed them to me over several days because of how
Because
many
there's a
comments.
lot now. Yeah.
Yeah,
I noticed your
so
account like blow up like lately. I was like, holy shit, like 700 comments, this and
yeah,
that. I'm like,
yeah.
wow, good for her.
So I literally don't even see everything that crosses my virtual desk. So I think it's just a combination of things. Mostly time.
Yeah.
It is
Plus,
for
you're
me.
doing what you do. You're a creator, so you're busy creating. Meanwhile, you got all this data coming through, and it's like, there's
Yeah.
no way I'm gonna get back to everybody, right?
Yeah, I do
Uh,
it my very best. I have a feeling there will be a point where I just can't, and my inbox will just have, hundreds of unread things.
yeah, that's. I think that's the time when you would get like you would hire somebody to take care of your account.
Potentially,
Yeah,
potentially. Yeah.
you're not there yet, though, right?
No, not
No.
yet. Not yet. It's still manageable, but it's right on that edge because
Yeah,
it's I really love interacting with fans, but unfortunately it's like not the number one priority for my business.
sure. Yeah,
Um, so I do it when I can. Usually it's evenings and weekends when I'm not doing my video game stuff. So
yeah.
there has to be a work-life balance too, though.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you had any like when you said you haven't had anything sinister? Have you had any really weird interactions where you had to like block people?
I've had a few arguments, but nothing that resulted in me needing to block anyone. Oh, that's not entirely true. There was one guy that was being really aggressive, and I was just like, I can't even talk to you. Bye. Like, I don't need this
Yeah,
energy. Uh,
yeah,
so yeah, it does happen, but most people are really good souls.
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
And okay, what made you go kind of steer towards the kind of dark slash gothic style?
I've just
Because like
always
in
enjoyed,
in River City Girls, it's mostly
yeah,
like upbeat Japanese poppy stuff, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Except for Watch Your Back, which is my favorite track on that. That sticks in my head like all the time.
That
But
one's
it's like
very
a nice
moody.
slow, moody one. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, when I first delivered that, they weren't so sure. They're like, well, this is really cool, but I don't know if it's going to quite fit in this, beat 'em up, energetic
I think
thing.
it's perfect.
But they
And
kept
like
it
the
in.
dark city streets,
Yeah,
the alleys, I think it's perfect.
I'm glad. Yeah, it worked out. But what made me go dark? I've always just loved darker music. I grew up,
Right.
I grew up listening to like two sides of the coin, right? I was obsessed with Spice Girls and Aqua, but also uh, Marilyn Manson. So like the full
Sure. Yeah.
spectrum. Um, yeah, I don't know. I've always loved dark music, and just find myself always gravitating towards that.
Why?
Oh, I don't know.
It's
I
the
don't know what
same with
it
me. Like I'm a very like happy-go-lucky person,
is.
but like I
Same.
love like dark, like
Yep.
evil sounding shit
Yep.
sometimes.
Same.
It's just fascinating to me. Like Behemoth from Poland. They're like one of the most quote unquote satanic bands on the planet right now, but they're so good.
I think I don't want to speak for you, but for me, without even really thinking about it, I feel like it's a safe exploration of the darker side of myself, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's an like when I'm creating this darker shit, it gets it out. It's a safe, productive way of exploring that the
It's
inner
like
demons,
it's like
bad
doing
thoughts.
shadow in the spiritual world, we call it doing shadow work,
Yes.
where you're balancing your light and your dark side because you can't always go fully dark or fully light, right?
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
kind of gotta express, you gotta get your yayas out, so to speak,
Yeah.
like the Rolling Stones would say, right?
Yeah.
And but like do it without harming anybody or hurting anybody,
Yeah.
like you said,
Exactly.
it's a safe way of expressing it and just balancing.
Hmm.
It's life is a balancing act, let's face it,
For
right?
sure. Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think that's why
yeah,
I like listening to darker, edgier stuff, watching horror movies. It just
that
feels
yeah,
like a good way to explore that part of myself.
yeah. I've had people come to me because my podcast is basically philosophical. I talk a lot about religion, spirituality, all that paranormal stuff. But people reach out to me, they're like, dude, you shouldn't be watching horror movies. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, it's like it's all negative. I'm like, dude, I believe that when we watch horror movies, we are exercising our fears,
Mm.
not necessarily becoming what's the word, desensitized to what we see on the screen, but it gives us a little bit more of a stability. Like if we were to see somebody bloodied up on the street, we'd be more inclined to be less fearful and help them instead of being
Sure.
like, oh, you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I feel that like watching horror is a good way to release that negativity and be less fearful of your surroundings. Would
Yeah.
you agree with that?
I would. I also I can't remember where I saw this, but I read an article about a study where participants were watching horror movies and they sort of did brain, electrodes and scans and whatever, and it actually lights up the problem solving parts of your brain rather than
Right.
your response, which I thought was super interesting. So,
That's
yeah,
very cool. Yeah.
it's super cool that like watching horror movies doesn't actually make you afraid. It makes your brain process and problem solve. So in that way,
Yeah.
you think about it like that, horror movies might even make you smarter.
It's true. I mean, there's also a study that people who swear a lot are uh, more happy.
Yes, I heard that as well.
Yeah, yeah. And like, no wonder why I'm so fucking happy.
Amen.
I grew up with three older brothers and a sister, and I was influenced and at a very early age with rock and roll, metal music, and also horror movies. My older brothers, because I'm the youngest, right?
Yeah.
My older brothers were renting horror movies. So when I was like 4 years old, I saw George Romero's Dawn of the Dead. And it didn't scare me. I was just like, "Whoa! Like this is so fascinating, right?"
Right.
And then when I started going to school, like kindergarten and stuff like that, people were like, "Oh, what kind of movies do you?" And I'm like, people were like watching Disney movies. I'm like, "Oh, you never seen Dawn of the Dead or Return of the Living Dead?" Like, ew, you're weird.
So
you
funny.
know?
I was a little bit late to horror. I was pretty I was pretty sensitive as a kid, and my mom didn't really want me watching anything freaky. So I remember always going when we would go to the video store to rent movies, I would just like walk down the horror aisle and all of the
Of
VHS
course.
covers would be just like looking at me and I'd be so curious, but I never really went there until high school. And even in high school, I guess actually I saw Sixth Sense in the theaters. I think I was
Okay.
13 and it really freaked me out. Like that was my
Yeah.
introduction to horror. And I just, yeah, I didn't sleep that night.
That was a pretty wild one. Sixth Sense was the one that was like really, it pushed the bar when it came to surprise endings.
Hmm.
We were like, whoa, he was dead the whole time.
Next level at that point in time. But yeah,
Yeah.
that was one of my earlier introductions, even though I was 13 at the time. Um, and then The Ring really freaked me out in high school.
Hmm.
Oh, that one still gets me a little bit. Like I can watch it now without not being able to sleep, but it still holds up. Um,
The
where I
Ring and The Grudge.
so I didn't see The Grudge until much later, when I had totally inundated myself with horror movies, and I was like, eh.
Yeah. You kind of got over it by that time, right?
Yep, yeah, yeah. The more horror I watched, the more I enjoyed it, and I was less freaked out by it.
Right. That's the thing. Like, people are like, why is horror your favorite genre? I'm like, well, they're not the best movies, but they're just so entertaining to me. It's not the fact that they're like, you know, Oscar winning performances or anything like that, but the concepts most of the time are better than the way they pull it off. You know what I mean? The execution.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, like whatever. Horror is my favorite thing. My dad's always like, I can't watch horror movies. I'm like, why not? They're so much better. Anyway, like I it's just my thing, you
Yeah.
know, and I just can't see why people don't like it. But that's we're all different, right?
Yeah, to each their own. I don't understand why people would like top 40 country or mumble rap. So
God
it's just,
bless you. God bless.
it is what it is. People can like whatever they want.
That's it. That's it. And we can all get along, even though we like different things.
Yes. Variety is the spice of life.
Who were like, what would you say would be like your number one influential artist, musician,
Hmm.
or
Oh,
favorite?
so hard to narrow it down.
I know. I do have
I
like top three, maybe top three.
top three. Okay, I can do top three. Uh, Probably Depeche Mode for sure.
Oh, yeah. I could hear that too.
Um, the artist Chris Corner, he is
Oh
both
my God.
of Sneaker Pimps and IMX. I kind of love
Hmm.
him as just a unit, those two bands, because he's the front man for both. Definitely.
Love Sneaker Pimps and Chris Corner for sure. IMX, amazing.
Oh my God, so good.
Tell me, what did you think of Squaring the Circle?
I haven't listened to the whole thing yet.
It's, I wouldn't say disappointing, but it's, there's a lot of tracks on it because I think it's like a double album. And there's a
Okay.
lot of tracks on it that I skip. But the ones
Mm,
that are good are really good. You really got to listen.
yeah, I know. I still haven't heard Depeche Mode's newest one either, Memento Mori. Like it's been on my list forever, but I just when I spend all day creating music, I don't have as much time to just sit and listen.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, but I gotta give you a third artist. I don't know how much influence he's had on me, but I have been a diehard fan since I was in middle school all the way through his modern stuff, and that's Beck.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Beck was huge when I was in like grade nine because
Hmm.
that's when Loser came out.
Yep.
When
Yep.
Odelay came out, I was like, that was the biggest thing ever.
Oh my God. Totally is such an incredible, bizarre album. It's so,
He
so
is a bizarre person.
he's a bizarre person. I just super admire how he can do pretty much any genre, and every single album almost has a different genre to it, but it
Yep.
all sounds like him.
Yeah. That's what I love about my one of my favorite bands, Faith No More.
Oh my God. Angel Dust is so good. Oh God.
Like every album is different,
Yeah,
but it's still Faith No More,
right,
right?
right.
Amazing.
Speaking of Mike Patton, have you heard Lovage?
I have.
Okay. There's only one album, but it is one of my top albums of all time.
Isn't it amazing?
It's fantastic. It's so good.
Damn.
Pulling out the
What's
deep cut.
that? What's that one song called again? Oh my God. You know which one I'm talking about, right? The really slow one that starts with the acoustic, the nylon guitar.
Is it Anger Management?
That's the one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, what a song.
I know. That whole album is just
I
quite an
remember when
experience.
I showed my ex-girlfriend that album and she just like became obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, like his voice makes me want to melt in my chair.
Yep. Same. I had the exact same reaction.
I had the honor and privilege of meeting him twice in my
Oh
life
my goodness.
and
Amazing.
got a picture taken. Well, not really. It's funny because I saw Mr. Bungle in like 2001 and somebody was filming with a huge camcorder at the time. And like 20 years later, I'm looking on YouTube, Mike Patton with fans for some reason. And I
Mhm.
saw this video with in the thumbnail and my best friend, one of my best friend's face was in the thumbnail. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I clicked on it, and sure enough, I was there. My other friends were there. And I was standing there with Mike, and we're shaking hands, and he's like signing my ticket. And I was
Oh
like,
my goodness.
wow.
There it is.
It's so weird, like 20 years later. And I thought, when I saw the video, I was like, that's right. Somebody was filming it.
There it is.
It
Yeah.
was crazy.
Wild.
So crazy. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that he wasn't an asshole because the media was always saying a lot of people were saying he was a dick,
Mm,
but he was like more than happy to hang out and chill with us. So it was cool.
very cool. Yeah, I recently fell head over heels for Blue Stolly, if you're familiar with him.
I'm not.
You're not? Oh, okay.
No.
Okay, if you like metal and you like cyberpunk vibes,
Okay.
I will send you some stuff.
Sounds
Uh,
good.
but anyway, I got to have lunch with him a couple weeks ago, and he's just the nicest freaking person I've ever met. Like,
Awesome.
just totally down to talk shop and music and movies, and it was great. He was awesome.
That that's awesome. I always love when the most evil looking sounding metal people are big teddy bears.
Yeah.
Because this goes back to what we were talking about, the shadow work. They're expressing their dark side, and when they get off the stage, they're like, "Hey, man, how are you?" You
Yeah.
know, it's so loving and warm. You know, it's
Yep.
fantastic. Every metal musician that I've met in my life was like super cool and down to earth.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel that way about pretty much all horror fans too.
Yeah,
Horror fans are really chill people, typically.
totally, totally. We have less stress.
I guess
I
so.
think, you
Maybe
know,
that's
it just gets rid of all the bullshit in our
it.
systems.
Maybe that's it. Yeah, I don't know why, but perhaps that is.
Do you know what next single you're going to release is, or is that up in the air right now?
I do know. Um, I don't know if I should keep it a surprise or not. I think I'm going to keep it a surprise for now.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Time zone,
time frame,
time frame.
the end of next month. So I'm trying to do one,
Okay,
trying to release them about 4-ish weeks apart.
awesome.
Yeah. So end of
And
March.
then the compilation, the album.
Yeah, I'm chipping away. Uh,
Okay.
I just got a bunch of game work across my plate, so this year,
Sometime. Stay
sometime.
tuned.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to work on it kind of in my off hours or kind of schedule myself as a client, but it hasn't been it's been taking priority, but now that more game work has come in, I'm like, okay, I have to focus on that. So, album is pending.
Right on. Cool. I'm looking forward to that. I hope my listeners are. Guys, listen to Megan McDuffie. She's fucking awesome. I'm not going to take up any more of your time, but thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And you're welcome. And where can my audience find you? Do you have
I
a
am,
main website where they could just go and boom, everything's there?
yeah, kind of, meganmcduffie.com, or I am available on all major music platforms. So if you search me on Spotify, I'm there. If you search me on Bandcamp, I'm there. iTunes, same thing. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, and check me out on Instagram, which is Meg McDuffie. I post little cover slices every week.
Love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Meg. Have a good
Yeah,
one.
thank you. You too.